guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another F1 Worldwide, the fan podcast, where we kind of chat to fans of Formula One around the world, and it is another one based in the UK, and maybe some familiar guys that you might know. I expect you probably know, as we've done a fair few collaborations with them by now, and that is we have Jordan and Lyle here from the F1 Debate Show. So guys, welcome back to the show, and thank you for coming back on.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Nice to be back.
Well, it's great having you on, and it's great to have the first one of 2020 as well. And so, obviously, you know how it works now, guys. On the F1 Worldwide Fan Podcast, we have a topic that we discuss, and it will go on for as long as it kind of goes on with our chat. Hopefully just you enjoy listening to a good F1 chat. And so today's topic subject is, do we think there should be more teams in Formula One? And we'll obviously expand on that if we do. What teams, obviously there have been a few that have been rumoured, and maybe some teams or manufacturers we'd like to see come into sport, but that's basically the basis of the topic, and we'll get started. So I will pose the question first to you, Lyle. Do you think that we need, or would you want, more teams in Formula One?
I do think so, yes. That's my short answer. The long answer, the long explanation to that is, this year we've had 10 teams in Formula One, which is good to see. But there's two real sides to that. There's not enough seats for all the budding drivers that want to come in. I think with more teams, it would, of course, open up the seats for more drivers to come in, but also would be more exciting for fans. Just the normal things. There'd be another 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 teams to support. There'd be more action on track. There'd be more of a competition. Because there is 20 drivers fighting it out in only 10 positions. So really, half of those drivers can't get in the points. And then you think, well, it'd be more of a competition if there was more teams. Because then, if let's say there was 28 drivers on the grid, then that's of course more of a competition to get into the points. I think more teams would make it more exciting, and obviously there'd be more drivers on the grid, which is what we would want to see as fans, and of course what they would all want, because when we're talking about drivers trying to get into Formula One, there's of course not many seats left. Like for example with Nico Hülkenberg, once one seat's taken up, then that's your chance gone.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and I think that is the main positive of bringing new teams in. You can question or not whether they be competitive or drive the sport forward, but there is a lot of talent out there, and I think there seems to be an increased interest in feeder series or guys like Nico Hülkenberg who've gone out. I know a lot of people wanted him to stay, but guys like maybe Pascal Wehrlein, Nick De Vries didn't get an opportunity, although he was F2 champion, not to have, because there wasn't really a seat available because he couldn't really offer anything financially. So therefore, he lost out on his opportunity, although he maybe had the talent and was at least worth a shot to look in Formula One. Jordan, what would your thoughts be?
I would want to see more teams in Formula One as well, like just touching on what Lyle said before about, getting some more drivers in who maybe will never ever get a shot at the chance in Formula One. Because let's face it, when you first start in karting, you more or less your aim is to get to Formula One. And not a lot of people will get there. And some of that is down to, financial stuff, but some of it is down to there isn't enough seats. So, for example, you might get to Formula 3, and then you might go, well, this guy's ahead of me, this guy's ahead of me, this guy's ahead of me, and there's only 20 seats on the grid, and about 6 of them are guaranteed to be filled because of, they're always at the front. Then you're just going, well, I'm just going to look at another series. And of course, Formula One isn't the be-all and end-all of motorsport. Of course, there is other categories. Like you said before, Nick De Vries, he went to Formula E, he can make a name for himself there. That's still brilliant. That's better than nothing, I suppose. But I also want to see, instead of seeing more teams in terms of car manufacturers, I know this is quite difficult to happen, especially in the day of very expensive Formula One, but I would like to type of team where, someone, I don't know, like a guy who likes cars build up from more or less nothing to, racing in lower categories and up and up and up all the way to the big time Formula One, like a fairy tale kind of story. That's what I would like to see more of, and that's what hopefully I will want to see again at some point. But like I said, with the way the financial side of F1, that'll be very, very difficult for someone to actually go on and do that unless you're made millions and billions like a certain Lawrence Stroll. I know he's not in that category as such because he kind of bought the team with a consortium, so that's not really the same kind of thing. But you get my gist of like someone coming in and just building a team from nothing. Like, so let's say I don't know, someone called John Harper, let's say, he called himself Harper Grand Prix, for example, just off the top of my head, for example. Like a guy who his father was his grandfather worked with cars in Ford, for example. I don't know, like some sort of story like that. So it's got that more humble background to it as well, which is something I would like to see in F1, but of course that's not going to be the case, like I said before. But other than that, I would like to see more, car manufacturers in the sport, because they're more realistic as well, because a lot of them are going elsewhere to like the Formula E and stuff like that, and they're kind of dodging Formula One, and that's supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport, and with the way it's going, it's not like that. So for that reason, I would like to see more car manufacturers in the sport to kind of, make the sport more entertaining, and also give it a more global attention, because the likes of Audi are there, or Volkswagen are there, or whoever else is there, and just get more people attracted to Formula One, rather than just thinking, well, I don't need to go to Formula One, I can go to elsewhere because Porsche are in this category or whatever. So I think we do need to see more teams in F1, especially with the direction that Liberty Media will want to take the sport within the next 10 to 20 years.
I think some very good points there, and the independent teams is certainly an interesting one. Ash, have you got any thoughts on that?
For me, I don't know whether it's necessarily more teams that are needed within the sport. One thing I would like is probably to have more manufacturers within. If you go back to maybe 3 seasons, you could guarantee that best of the rest, the battle was going to be between Force India and Williams, because they had the Mercedes engine, which at the time was so far ahead of the Ferrari that it, as a customer team, they had that advantage. When it comes to getting more rookies into the sport or giving those opportunities, one thing I would probably think of looking is going back to 3-car teams, having that opportunity and saying that if you are going to be in a position of doing 3 cars, that 3rd car should be someone that is a rookie or someone who's trying to build up points for the super license. Almost looking at going to like it's LMP2, isn't it, where you have the gentleman driver, so you have people that have that money paying as an amateur to race, but if you give that opportunity to someone who has that racing experience, so someone who has competed in F2 for example, but having that chance in Formula 1, if it works then they can retain the seat. If not, it's one where there is that opportunity for more rotation of drivers, so that people are being able to get that foot into a Formula 1, because yes, there's a variety of motorsports out there and different categories, but the pinnacle of motorsport is still Formula 1. I would say the only thing that probably gets close to that is WEC when it comes to Le Mans. Other than that, I would say most people's aim, if they're getting into racing, is that they want to have that opportunity to race in Formula 1 and be drivers' champion in the category. So yeah, I think the 10-team system is probably the right amount. I would prefer either additional drivers or bringing in more engine manufacturers. Like I know that Audi and Aston Martin are the 2 at the moment that people are mainly talking about coming into the sport. So it'd be good to see them, especially when you look at how they've been performing in DTM at the moment. Both of the cars that they're using road cars for that, but the engines that they're using within that and the competitiveness of the category itself shows that they would have that ability. So yeah, I think that would be my route at the moment.
I think obviously all of you made very good points. In terms of maybe Jordan's independent one, I think having the 175 million budget at least makes it more plausible for those guys, because at least now you have a clear focus. Okay, I need to compete in Formula 1, I'm going to need to get that amount of budget through sponsors, whatever means through there. That's what I'm going to need to be able to compete, plus whatever. But you've got a clear benchmark from there. I think the interesting one of bringing more teams who power, because that's where I'd say Formula E does have an advantage over Formula 1 at the moment, because the amount of powertrains in Formula E, in terms of, I think only Audi and Mercedes power 2 teams, but the rest are pretty much their own created engines. And with that budget cap, maybe it means that Formula 1 will become a cheaper sport to create an engine, because I think at the moment Formula E in comparison is a pretty cheap engine to produce. So it's interesting on there. But I think there's a consensus of Ashley's like maybe not necessarily change, but find a way of increasing the number of drivers in. I think we're all in agreement there of there is some talent that we maybe miss out, that there's a way that we probably need to find a route into Formula 1 for them, because like we said, it is the pinnacle of motorsport. So the question I would now pose is, obviously we have had the rumours of Pantera and Campos maybe future coming in. Who would you like to see come in to Formula 1, and maybe what sort of drivers you would like to see come in? So we'll stick to the first one. What teams would you like to come in to F1? I'll start with Jordan this time.
I think I would like to see some of the teams that are in Formula 2. I'd like to see them promoted and see how they would do in the big times, like ART or Carlin. For example, as well. I think they would be quite cool to see. Well, it doesn't have to be any of them; just be like any one. I think if like the likes of Prima come in, they'll just be another Ferrari kind of team, like what Alfa Romeo are, maybe kind of what Haas are, and maybe not Haas, but Alfa Romeo. Maybe not Prima at this time, but anyone in Formula 2, even Formula 3, for example, to come in and have a good go, like a promotion type of thing. So like in football, if you do really well in the lower division, you'll get promoted to the next one, and you've got to work extra hard to see whether you can survive in a bigger and better league that's going to be playing faster and better football. Like, so the step from F2 to F1 in terms of cars is massive. So therefore, teams have to work hard. All right, spend a bit more money. Of course, they're going to have to, but let's just see how they could do, because the likes of HRT and Lotus, when they came in, they were just like they didn't have that like experience or anything. They just kind of went into it, pumped loads of money at it, and just failed instantly because they just thought it was going to work with money, and it didn't. But the likes of, like I said, Carlin and ART, they were just and even Campos, they've got that experience of, and Dams off the top of my head, they have that experience of working, building the car season, year by year. They're just going to make some alterations and stuff, go into F1 and just have a good crack at it. And I think that'll be quite good as well. So if Campos do come into F1, I would like to see how they would get on, and I think it would be quite exciting as well to see like a team from a younger category could like make that jump into Formula 1. I think that would be cool to see.
Yeah, I think that would very much make Formula 1 a clear path and pyramid system, and I think almost it could encourage more people to be interested in the junior series, because if you have like Campos and ART, a Dams Racing, there's a pyramid of teams, maybe if you bring high-tech racing into it from F3 as well, if there is a clear path of, if they do well in F3, they get promoted to the F2 Campos team. If they do well in F2, they get promoted to the F1 Campos team. And then, it's something that they can almost buy into a little bit more. And you'd certainly, I reckon, probably get people invested in drivers a lot younger. But I switched the question over to you, Lyle. Who would you like to kind of see involved in Formula One in the future?
Well, I agree with Jordan off the bat. Campos, if you had Campos F1, F2, that's great. That's a proper promotion, because obviously the problem is that you might have linked teams in terms of the engine and maybe team personnel. But when you go to Formula One, it's completely different. I think Red Bull had a Formula 3 team, and I was always expecting them, when I first came in the sport, I was always expecting them to have a Formula 2 team and then a Formula 1 team. But a Formula 2 in their livery and with all the people. So really you went through the entire Red Bull programme. So they have the Red Bull Junior programme, but you end up still going to maybe a different team and loaned out, and it's still not a done deal where you can learn and evolve. But one thing is quickly on the Formula 1 is I was thinking about more is that, like Toro Rosso, the feeder team to Red Bull, and then you might have Haas as a feeder team to Ferrari. And that's what's really needed in Formula 1. So possibly if maybe not each team, but a few teams could have more of a feeder team. But instead of them sitting in the Formula 2 ranks, sit in Formula 1, just so they can get a feel of the sport, because even though every team's different, they obviously all comply with the same thing, bigger cars, more expensive, budget caps and things like that. But the teams that I'd like to see, and of course it would be good to see Formula 2 teams, in terms of car manufacturers, I mean, it does sound better to think that we're going back to having more car manufacturers, more bigger names in Formula One, the likes of Porsche, Aston Martin. But Aston Martin, they're kind of in Formula One at the moment, see, with Red Bull Racing. But the thing that I would change with that is that if Aston Martin came in, I would want them to be a proper team. I wouldn't want them. I like the sound of Red Bull Aston Martin, or Aston Martin Red Bull Racing, but I don't like the fact that that's Aston Martin's only contribution. If Aston Martin were going to be in Formula One, I'd want them to be their own team. Obviously, things like Ford as well, would maybe like to see them. But of course, that's just a pipe dream, because we'd have to be wanting them to be in Formula One. I would say, any of the Formula 2 teams step up. Maybe some links to some of the Formula E teams, and then obviously in that way maybe they could have more of an involvement, because you mentioned Nick de Vries, obviously Formula 2 champion, went to Formula E. But the thing is, and what me and Jordan have discussed before, is that going from going from kind of a Formula series like this to Formula E, a bit like what Stoffel Van Dorn's done, it's very hard to go back from Formula E back to Formula 1 or Formula 2 or whatever. So for example, Stoffel Van Dorn did that. It's looking very slim that he'll come back. And unfortunately, Nick de Vries, ex-McLaren junior driver, obviously me and Jordan knew him when he was going through the ranks, and obviously became champion in Russia, looking like it's very slim that he's going to now be returning back to Formula 1. And obviously, if there was a partnership there between Formula 1 and Formula E teams, then obviously it would be looking like he could come back. And obviously many of the other drivers that have gone over to Formula E or different types of Formula or motorsport.
Yeah, I think I would. It may be disagreed, but I would see, if we were looking at on a ladder, F1 sits at the top of the pyramid, and I would say a step from F2 to Formula E, as it currently stands, would be a sidestep, because it's a spec series. I think the kind of thing that kind of really stands Formula 1 out is still at the moment you have that ingenuity and technical brilliance of engineers as well, that you have to earn your right to get into the top cars, and the finest machinery kind of has no boundaries, although it will do from 2021 onwards. But I think, those kind of classic, I'd agree with you there, Lyle. If Aston Martin came in, and obviously with that link with Racing Point maybe having a connection, I would like to see them as their own team and in that kind of classic racing green livery. I think that would certainly draw a lot of fans, and if they could get a good driver lineup behind it, I could see they could get a swell of support, a bit like what Red Bull got from their early days in there. So Ash, I know obviously you were veering towards maybe introducing away from introducing new teams, but if you were pushed into a corner and you would like to see some new teams, who would they be?
Team-wise, I do like the idea of the likes of Carlin, Dams and ART having that opportunity to take the step up into Formula 1, because if you look over definitely I'd say the last 2 seasons, but F2 has got a lot more competitive recently, and it is because of that innovation that the teams are bringing in. Yes, the rules are a lot stricter in F2 as to what you can actually innovate and where you can differentiate from other teams, but that's still been present in the series. Manufacturer-wise, we've had the discussion. I like the idea of Aston Martin coming in as a manufacturer, and I agree with Lyle that if they do come into Formula 1 as a manufacturer, it needs to be as their own team, because the one thing I want back in Formula 1 is the typical British racing green. We've joked about it before that if we were to ever do any sort of racing where we were going out, we would be having our car racing green because it's just that classic colour. But I think Audi as well, they're another manufacturer that the rumours aren't going away, that they are interested in Formula 1. It's just whether or not they want to take that step, because they have got obviously the Formula E side of things, and that was their big marketing push as well that they were doing. They wanted to go for the electric vehicles. That at the time when Formula E started, and Audi were at that stage of being one of the front runners for electric vehicles, so they were wanting to have that push. So I don't know whether they'd be willing to now go to a hybrid engine for Formula 1. But another manufacturer wise, someone like a Ford, like Liberty at the moment, their big thing is they want to get that American market. That's what they're targeting. That's why we've got all of the things about a race in Miami, looking at trying to get another race somewhere else in America. They want that fan base. So we've got Haas as an American team, but really they're a Ferrari B team more than anything, because the majority of the car is Ferrari based, and in general they're buying in all of their parts. To have a manufacturer like a Ford, where you're going to have a lot of Americans supporting them for the simple reason that it's an American company. So it would give the sport that opportunity to grow in a market where at this moment in time you do have Formula 1 fans in America, but if you were to say to an American, well, what motorsport do you follow? It's NASCAR or IndyCar. Formula 1 still isn't as big out there as I think Liberty are going to want it to become.
I think I'd agree. The American market is certainly something that Liberty are targeting massively. You can see that with obviously like the Miami race, the Vegas race that was kind of touted. It's certainly one. And the two biggest ways to do that is one would be to get an American driver, and through the junior ranks at the moment, only Logan Sargent in F3 is the only American there, and it depends whether Colton Herta or anyone wants to take a punt on him, who was very good in his rookie season in IndyCar last year. Those are your two options there, but Ford is a massive manufacturer. But the question is, you've had Ford Cosworth engines in the past. Convincing them to kind of come in as a full team in their racing history, you can only really think back to kind of road cars is the main ones they do. So that would be a difficult pitch, I think, to get Ford in. So I think we've discussed about the positives of having new teams in, like the drivers, seeing manufacturers. There'd be a lot of support for these type of things, and they can help grow the sport. But currently, as it stands, the last stance of the FOM and anything that Ross Brawn has said is 2021, they were certainly ruling out new teams, and they were very skeptical about new teams joining the sport until they offered something. So I think we'll take a switch and we'll go to weigh up both sides of the argument. What would be the reasons for not having any more teams within Formula One? And I'll go with you, Lar.
Well, I mean, the thing is, of course, it's very expensive to be in. Like you said, it's 175 million. That's the buy-in, and then obviously you've got to maintain it, and it's a money game. So, firstly, with anyone who's going to come into Formula, so for example, Jordan said at the start about independent teams. We had Gene Haas, so Haas, I'm not too sure, but there's something in America. I think they do like drills and stuff, diggers, hardware stuff. Definitely not Formula One, definitely not anything to do with that.
No.
And Gene Haas came in as really one of the kind of the only and the very last entrepreneurs who bought into Formula One and did it in such a way that we were like blown away by. He was just this American businessman who had a dream to buy into something that as you're right, it's not really that revered in the USA still to this day. But I don't think that's ever going to happen in the future. So even if a massive company like, let's say, Ford, for example, buys into Formula One again as a proper full team, I think they're still going to have that worry, that ongoing worry that we might not have enough money to do this. We might not be able to sustain ourselves with all the new changes and the regulations to money and finance and all this and that and the other. We might not be able to keep up, and then they might one day have to leave. That could happen to any team, I think. And then also as well, I think the drivers that they get, they'll be worried, and there'll just be this ongoing worry about, can we keep up in Formula One with the physical demand, with the money, with everything that we need to put into this? Is it actually worth it? It's a bit like, it's a bit like getting a dog. You might like the idea of getting a dog, but when you think about all the times you're going to have to walk it and pay for food and pick up after it and all that stuff that you just can't physically and mentally do, and then you think, it's not a good idea, and then you might have to put it up for put it up for adoption or something. I don't know what you do with a dog. I don't have a dog. It's like that, really. It might not be a good feasible option, and it might bring worry to that team, the drivers, because obviously drivers are worried about keeping their seats on a good day. Even with a team like Ferrari, the drivers, especially now Sebastian, are worried about keeping their seats. So what is it going to be like for drivers at a brand new team who might think, oh God, this might not last? Because I know for a fact that Esteban Gutierrez and Roman Grosjean both said in 2016, we are worried about this because the Haas could just fall flat in their first year, and we could be out of the seat. Esteban was, but it wasn't because of the team going under. It was because the team were actually excelling, and they knew that it'd get someone better in. So I think if a new team did come in, that would be their worry. And if they weighed up all of the reasons why this is a good idea, and all the reasons why it isn't a good idea, all the reasons that it isn't would outweigh the good ones, and they would either not go, or they would go for a bit and then they would leave, either because they decided to leave, or they would be pushed out because they wouldn't have enough money and they just wouldn't even be able to keep up. Because at the end of the day, they're competing with these big boys, Mercedes, McLaren, who have been going for 40, 50, 60 years, and even Haas, who have been going since 2016 and planning even before that. So they wouldn't be able to keep up, and that obviously would probably be the biggest reason why teams would leave or just not come into Formula One. And that would be either from an independent side or from like a Ford or a Lamborghini or an Audi, teams that are established, companies that are established and obviously do have the money behind them.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. It is like jumping off a cliff and hoping that you don't fall, you make your entry into the water okay and you don't just kind of break every bone in your body type thing, isn't it? It's just it's a huge step to take, and we're not talking about I might try this, I'm going to spend £100 on it, I could write that off. We're talking, I mean, I know the people involved do have millions of pounds, but we're talking a huge financial investment, and there is no guarantee that it's successful. It's a huge risk, and I think that is a lot of the time what has put people off. And with the dominance that Mercedes has had in the sport, and with Ferrari and Red Bull being the only teams who've come close to challenging them, it doesn't really seem appealing to probably any new guys coming in. But Jordan, your thoughts on why entering F1 is a bad idea?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons I can think of, and one of them could be that if let's say you bring in three new teams, for example, that's six new cars on the grid. So therefore, the grid goes from 20 to 26, which is brilliant. There's more cars on the grid, which means more exciting racing. Brilliant. But in the current points format, for example, the points only go from first to 10th. So let's say you start 26 on the grid and you finish in 11th place. That's a brilliant drive going from 26 to 11th. You've gained a lot of places, but for what? You've scored no points. It doesn't matter. So therefore, I think if for that to work, the rules will have to change in terms of the point system will have to go from maybe 10th to 14th, let's say, for example. So therefore, that's only in Liberty Media's and FIA hands whether they want that to change, and also a couple of other things have to change as well. And if they don't change anything, that could be a negative. If I'm going off, today's Formula 1 results, let's say tomorrow, like I said, 3 new teams come in to join for 2020. I know it's not going to happen, but let's say in a different world, then you're going to have that problem of, all right, you've seen some good racing, but then it's like, but that driver's is then going to go, well, I've gained all these positions and I've scored no points. Like, what's the point? And then the driver might go, look, I'm just going to go off elsewhere to another sport where I could show off my talents in a different series, maybe with a better car. Let's say the car you're driving is like, it's just bang average. You're not going to be at the front, all the time, for example. But another thing could be is that let's say a team comes in 2022 and gets it completely wrong. Let's say Ford comes into Formula 1, right? A big manufacturer like Ford or Audi or Porsche or whoever. They come into Formula 1 and they're in it for 3 years and they get it wrong, completely wrong. Development is poor, they're always at the back. It's just gone horribly wrong. 3 years in Formula 1. A bit like what HRT and Lotus did. I don't think a team like a manufacturer like Porsche would do that, but let's say they did. Then that would put off the likes of other manufacturers to go, well, if they got it wrong, then we're going to get it wrong, because therefore there's something not quite right with new teams coming in. So that could put a lot of people off. I know that the budget is set at 175 million, for the time being, and of course that could increase or decrease depending on how long the calendar is for the future. But that's not a guarantee as that it's still going to work, because at the moment we're still in the dark. The budget could be the same in grace of Formula 1, or it could be that the bigger teams still at the front and newer teams are still going to fail, type of thing. So you really don't know. And that's just my couple of things that I'm springing upon now that could be negatives as the new teams coming into F1 in the future.
Yeah, I think some very good points you made there, Jordan. And Ash, what would your thoughts be on?
Well, in recent years, we've seen teams come and go in Formula 1. It is one of those where just getting into Formula 1 takes so much that you're not going to see someone be able to come in and be able to compete straight away. So it's going to have that opportunity for a new team to come in. You are going to have to be looking at someone that is going to be investing for that long-term commitment. And I think it's all well and good saying there's that budget cap of 175 million coming in. But if you're going from 0 to competing in Formula 1, it's going to take more than that 175 million to set everything up. They're going to be competing against teams like Mercedes, Ferrari, who have been in the sport for a long time now and have got everything in place to be able to work within that budget. And we're now going to be in a position where we're going to be expecting a team to start competing against these guys from nothing, really. So the only way you are going to be able to get someone into Formula 1 and be able to compete is by having someone come up from either a junior series or from another series that has already had that investment and is able to adapt to the regulations almost straight away, almost like having a Haas, where they came into Formula One and they were at the moment, I think Haas are in a position where they've been almost the creators of their own downfall, in the fact that they had success early on and they haven't been able to maintain it. So you're needing to look at someone that is going to be able to have that. And at this moment in time, is there a manufacturer out there, or is there a team out there that's going to be able to take that step up and be able to get straight into challenging, not necessarily consistently for points, but being in and around the points enough of the time that when it comes to the end of the season and the money is distributed based on position in the Constructors' Championship, they're going to have enough to be able to reinvest and be able to develop.
Yeah, and I think for me, the main thing that you can probably look to in terms of new teams coming in that's an issue would be, you look at a great team like Williams. Obviously, with the history of Williams, you know, all they've achieved in the sport, all the great success they've had, they're now a team who are struggling. Recently lost Rexona. Obviously, with Robert Kubica leaving, they lost a co-title sponsor in Orlen, so they're leaking money out there, and they lost a couple of other small sponsors, and so they went for Nicholas Latifi. Yes, Latifi is a good driver, and I wish him all success in Formula One next year. But I think a large part of his decision to come in is the fact that he also brings in money as well. So yes, there are a use of paid drivers, but I think a lot of our enthusiasm was giving maybe some young talented drivers a go in F1. They may not necessarily be the guys to get the shot in F1 if you know, they don't have the financial backing behind them to back up their talent. And with these teams joining in, you see someone like Williams struggling. Who would be the new Williams? Who would be the new Haas who have struggled and from there and struggling to get sponsorships together? And would they be going for the young exciting drivers that as fans we all want to see? Or are they going to be going for the guys who are still talented, still exciting, but have that financial backing to go into the sport and might not necessarily bring on a driver level what we'd like to see? But I think, rounding up on thoughts from the podcast, I think probably our thoughts as a whole is, as fans, I think we'd love to see new teams, whether that be manufacturers, whether that see a clear path from Dams, Campos, ART Racing coming up through. I think as fans we'd love that, because we get to see more drivers, we love seeing more on-track action. But we can also probably all agree that financially and the risk versus reward joining F1 is a really pretty massive step to take. So you're going to have to kind of guess a ballsy guy like Gene Haas, or someone who just loved the sport like Enzo Ferrari did when he was like, we just compete in motorsport regardless, we are Ferrari, that's what we do. As fans, we've just got to hope for more of those guys, I think, probably on that one. But I think probably quite a good point to round off. Guys, again, thank you so much for coming onto the channel. Again, enjoying a fantastic chat as always with you guys. I hope you enjoyed that chat.
Yeah, it was really, really good. You know, any excuse to talk about Formula One, I'll do it. It doesn't matter how good or bad or boring or whatever it'll be. It's about F1. Yeah, we'll do it. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thanks, Mike, for having us on. I mean, as you were saying there, you know, as fans, we would love to see racing, you know, 52 weeks of the year. I don't think that would be any problems. But no, it's a good topic to talk about. I mean, Formula 1 is exciting where it is at the moment, but obviously, I mean, some of the early days when we had more teams, and you know, you just think it's more of an excuse to be a fan of someone, you know, more merchandise to buy and things like that. So yeah. Well, it's been a good hobby.
Yeah, I think my wallet would definitely suffer, as obviously I completed over the Christmas periods my 10-team lineup. So any more teams, it's more gear that I've got to go and search for to kind of complete. But guys,
you've got a new season coming up, so get the checkbook out, because you're going to need another 10 new T-shirts for 2020.
Yes.
Excellent. There we go. Let's go. Write the blank check. Let's get all the merchandise. But guys, like I always say when these guys come on, if you haven't checked them out by some bizarre reason that you've come across us before them, please do go and check out the F1 Debate Shows channel. Like us, kind of two guys and just love F1. I believe your term is always you enjoy watching things go fast round in circles.
Yeah, that's all right.
And you know, absolutely great channel. They recently hit 1,000 subscribers last year, but I think they're going to create some really fantastic content this year. And a bit like us, they're going to start doing F2 and F3 stuff feeder series that I know they're going to do a fantastic job on. So yeah, go and check out and drop them a subscribe and like. And yeah, it's been great fun as always, guys. But you know, for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.